Salakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvayagata Pahidinam Pahidyo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So now our festival is coming to a close, and so we're having just a little Istagosthi, some questions and answers, and surprise, surprise, I'm asking the questions and you're giving the answers. Okay. On the first day of the festival, we learned about the qualities of the jiva, which are specific to Vedanta and not found in other philosophical schools like Nyaya, Vaisheshik, Sankhya, Yoga, Purva-Mimamsa. So, what are those qualities of the jiva? Yes? Just have one or two qualities. These are the defects of the jiva. Okay, good try. Okay, over here, Rasikeka.
Yes, Jnana.
You see, those things are not part of the swarup of the jiva. They're when he's influenced by Maya. So, those are some qualities of the Bada Jiva, conditioned soul, but they're not inherent to the swarup of the Jiva itself. Yes?
So she has Jnana, she has Kriya, Kartritva, and she has Bhoktritva.
Yeah. Gyatritva, Bhoktritva, sorry. Gyatritva, Kartritva, and Bhoktritva. He is a knower, a doer, and an enjoyer. What are the three meanings of Gyan related to him being having Gyatritva, the quality of consciousness? Three meanings of Gyan? Someone? Yes.
He's aware of himself. That he's aware of objects, and that he's consciousness and can project that consciousness.
That's okay, almost. He has self-awareness. That is the first meaning of Gyan. Then the second meaning, he has the attribute that his consciousness can extend and reveal objects to himself. So subjective consciousness without content, objective consciousness with content, and lastly, he himself is a substrate of consciousness. In other words, the jiva himself is made of consciousness. So he's made of consciousness, and he has the quality of consciousness by which he knows himself, that's the first one, and by which his jnana vritti can extend to reveal to himself things other than himself. Well, these are the three. But though he is made of consciousness, the third one, he is the substrate of consciousness, the conscious substrate of consciousness. But he's not Gyan Matra. He's not only consciousness, because he has Kartritva, he can desire and act, and Bhoktritva, he can enjoy. He acts by Kartritva and becomes the Bhokta, the enjoyer of the result of the actions. Okay. So, then After that, we discussed Brahm, different types of Brahm. One related to the self. What is the Brahm related to the self? Yes, Jibabri. You're saying identification with the body. Would someone like to elaborate? That's exactly correct.
That the Atma invests the Ankara with his ego, with his identity. Invests with identity.
Yes, yes. The Atma himself has his own aham, his own ahankar. And he's investing that in the darkened portion of the chitta, which is his material ahankar. So this is the first type of Brahm, that is illusion in regard to one's true identity. Then the second type of Brahm, what is the second type of Brahm called? Yes, Prem.
Like his perception of the world is also...
Yes, correct, that is correct. What's the technical term for that? Rasik always aces it in the test, you know? Every time we have a test, Rasik aces it. He gets 10 out of 10. And then he spaces out. Yes? Okay. Yes, Pratak Drisha. But specifically, there's a type of Brahm. What is it called? It's probably on. Is it right there? I can't see what's on the board. What does it say? Okay, I'll give you a clue. It's right there on the board in front of all your eyes all the time. Sadrisha Brahm. Sadrisha Brahm. So, what does Sadrisha Brahm mean? Try to remember, it was very long time ago. Friday morning. That's definitely a part of it. Yes. Swatan, there are different aspects, you can describe it in different ways. He's saying, Swatantra Sataya, seeing that there is a multiplicity of self-existent units. So really Sadrisha Brahm means seeing a oneness in relation to an object. Just like saying, oh, this is the river. But that idea of one whole object called a river is in your mind. It's a representation. It's a chaya, a representation in your mind. Because actually it's just different water moving all the time. And you have made like a collective noun out of it and called it the river. Like a flame. So the body is like that always. In a state of flux, changing. It has no single stability. It is not self-existent. It's not independent, self-existent. So this Brahm is called Sadrisha Brahm. And on the part of the person who has Sadrisha Brahm, he has Aikya Buddhi. Remember the idea that this is one thing. This is one thing. So, in this way, Narad Rishi to Yudhishthira Maharaj has made a complete deconstruction of the bodily consciousness. Now, we discussed the verses showing how this body, or any object in this world, is not a self-existent individual whole that exists independently of its parts. So really, there are just the parts. What is this body other than earth, water, fire, air, ether? It's just the parts. But what is earth, water, fire, air, ether? They're also made of parts. So we cannot establish logically the existence of the whole, only the parts exist. But then when you move down to that level, you see that the parts are wholes in relationship to their parts. So that is also false. They are also not self-existent. This body is not self-existent without the elements that it's made of. But the elements themselves are not self-existent because they're made of parts. The Tanmatras in Sankhya, or in Nyaya and Vaisheshika, the atoms. So you go down, 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 and you find that you cannot establish any whole anywhere which is self-existent. So the actual one vastu, truth, self-existent truth, at the bottom of everything is only Paramatma. Understand? And if we don't see everything as Paramatma manifested, this is his one Paramatma has entered into the formless potential material energy in his form of time, Kriya Shakti, and he himself has become everything. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. That's actually the meaning. And if we don't see this, then we have Sadrishya Brahma. Sadrishya Brahma. So 2 classes we discussed. Then, after that, we discussed how to be in Avesh in our daily practices. And gave the example of the deep meaning behind our beautiful, very esoteric Mangalarti. And then it became Guru Purnima. And we discussed the life history of Srila Vyasadeva. Who will be the next Vyasadeva? Yes. Is our Vyasadeva, what type of avatar is he? Yes, he's Narayan himself. He's not Shaktivesh. Why do people think that our Vyasadeva is Shaktivesh? Yes.
Because in the other yugas, it is someone who is empowered by Vishnu.
Because in the other yugas, it's someone. This is one reason. There's another reason. Apantaraptama. There was one rishi in the Mahabharata, and there it's described that he has entered into. He did austerities, and then he became Vyasadeva. But that rishi became Vyasadeva. However, one should think that Lord Narayan has manifested an expansion who did the role like a jiva and entered into himself like this. Just like Nanda and Yashoda manifested Drona and Dara who did austerities to become Nanda and Yashoda, and who then entered into them during Krishna Lila. Like this. So we discussed many things in regard to Srila Vyasadeva. Then it became Sanatana Goswami Pada's disappearance. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained that the attainment of your Divya Deha, your spiritual form, it comes naturally. It's the nature of bhakti to give that. What is the praman for that? That the Swarup manifests as the result, naturally, of the result of bhakti. What is the praman? I'll give you a clue. Mahaprabhu explained this verse in 61 different ways. Atma Ramastamone Yone Granta Apyurukrame Kurvanto Hitakim Bhaktim Itam Bhuta Ganohari. If someone is Atmaram, self-satisfied, Muni, and there are different types, including those who have become liberated. Neya Granta Apyurukrame, they are completely liberated. So if one has become liberated, and he has given up this body and entered into Brahman, then Kurvanta Hoit Kim Bhaktim Hitam Bhuta Ganohari, how will he serve Hari? Unless the Supreme Lord, by his mercy, will give him a spiritual body. Because the jiva, without having either a material or a spiritual body, he cannot serve. So this verse, Mahaprabhu revealed the inner meaning of this verse, that it is the nature of bhakti that it bestows one with a spiritual body. Bhakti rasvabhava vai brahmahoiti akarshan divya deya deya kare Krishna bhajan. It is the nature of bhakti divya deya deya. It gives you a spiritual body and then you engage in Krishna bhajan. Or bhakti bali prapta swarup divya deya pai. By the power of bhakti prapta swarup, one attains divya deya, transcendental body. Bhakti bali prapta swarup divya deya pai. Guna Krishna guna Krishna hai Bhaje Krishna pai. And then in that spiritual body, all the senses of the spiritual body are intensely attracted to Krishna's qualities. And then he serves Krishna's lotus feet. All these are the direct words of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the explanation of the verse Atmaramastumunyo. This is why it's very important. Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, in his poem, Dushtaman Tumiki Shara Vaishnav, "O wicked mind, what kind of Vaishnav are you?" In that song, he has said, "Oh, you should study deeply the Sanatana Shiksha." Almost all the problems and deviations which come in our Gaudiya Vaishnavism is people trying to jump over to the Prayojan without giving Dandavat Pranam to the Sambandha Acharya Sanatana Goswami and deeply entering into his teachings. So first, become established in Sambandha Jnana by following the teachings of Srila Sanatana Goswami that were given by Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila chapter 20 to 24, and the writings of Srila Sanatana Goswami, especially Sri Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Okay. So, just going over this, I want everyone to refresh everyone. Don't let it evaporate into the air. During these now 5 days, you have heard so much, but now you are like a chipmunk with your cheeks are full, but you have to chew it and digest it yourself. So try to do this. When my Gurudev would give class, I would listening and noting down everything. And then after the class, I would go and look up every verse that he said that I didn't know, find where it is and add it to it. And then study it and meditate on it. Repeat it to others and memorize everything in time for the class the next day. So take Harikatha very, very seriously, like a full-time job. Like you're in university and it's your final exam next week. And you are studying, thinking, trying to testing yourself, talking with others. Harikatha is our greatest treasure. Don't take it like something casual. Don't be distracted. Srinvata Swadya Nitya Gnatascha Chachestitam Kalena Nati Dirgaina Bhagavan Vishate Riddhi. Sutta Goswami Pad is saying, those persons who always engage in hearing Harikatha and they take it very seriously, then for those persons, Kalena Nati Dirgaina, not in a long time, it means in a short time, Bhagavan Vishate Riddhi, Bhagavan Sri Krishna enters into their heart. Bhagavan enters into their heart. So in the commentary on this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Vishnu Chakra Thakur said, Shravana Kirtanavato Bhaktasya Smarna Prayatna Na Vyasyaka. The meaning is, for those who are engaged deeply in hearing and chanting, they don't have to make any prayatna, any effort to do smaran. So For those who are engaged deeply in hearing and chanting, you don't have to do any effort to do smarana. Because if you are hearing deeply and deliberating on it, then when you chant Harinam, it will just start coming by itself. Krishna will manifest himself. So we can open the floor to the questions. Did you have an order of all persons who are? Yes. Okay. So just raise your hand if you have a question. Yes, Prayojan Prem.
I would like to ask Gurudev,
Объяснить две шлоки из
please explain two shlokas of Vishnu Purana about Namatata.
Maya Pranaka Vitampe, Namata Terikapanaha, Brahma Paramam Nityam, Avikari Bhavana Jan. And next shloka, Nakalpanari Terkasya, Sarvasya Sarvasya Himakoyataha, Tasma Krishna Chitananda, Vishnu Namaki Vidyase.
The meaning of these verses of Padma Purana are explaining that the holy name is Vikalparahit, free from Vikalpa. There's a camera is right behind you. Prayojan, come this way. So these verses are very important. They are explaining that Harinam is Vikalpa Rahita, free from Vikalpa. It's very difficult for a person who does not have a deep background in philosophy, in Vedanta, to understand what Shastra is saying. Because how do you translate Vikalpa? What is Vikalpa? If you look in a dictionary, it may say imagination or something like that, but it's not like this. Meaning is this: according to Vedic philosophy, when you see something, the immediate moment that you see it, there is a raw and unfiltered experience, and your senses sense it, but your intelligence has not identified the jati or the category that it is in. So let's say you see a cow. So first there is a perception, and that is called Nirvikalpa Pratyaksh. That means indeterminate perception. Indeterminate perception. And then the next moment, your intelligence moves and identifies what is the category of this object in front of you. So this is a cow. There's the jati, the category cow, and this is the instantiation of one particular cow, and your intelligence has identified it. So then that level of perception is called the Savikalpa Pratyaksh. So this is also applied to Bhagavan, to God. If a person has a Nirvikalpa Pratyaksha of God, this is Brahman. Because seeing Brahman means they see the truth, but they don't experience its particular qualities, its particularities. Now, when we see an object in this world, let's say there's a pot, So then first when you look at it, the senses just see something. And then in a split second, at once, the intelligence moves, vikalpa, and identifies this is a pot. So now you put a name to it. This is a pot. So the name of this thing takes place after the process of vikalpa. Right? There's nirvikalpa pratyaksh, but you don't know what it is. The intelligence moves, becomes savikalpa pratyaksh, and then you say this is a pot and you give a name to it. So all the names of this material world, they are coming from the vikalpa. The movement of the material intelligence in identifying the jati of that object after the preliminary indeterminate perception. All the names of this world are, but here the Padma Purana is saying the name of Krishna is Vikalpa Rahita. It is free from Vikalpa. So what does that mean? That means, let's say someone says to you, in the other room, you cannot see it, but in the other room, there is a pot. Now when you hear the word pot, at first when the sound comes, it's a nirvikalpa pratyaksh. You just heard a sound. But then vikalpa, your intelligence moves and identifies the word pot. And then the picture comes in your mind of what's in that room. So the sound is coming. If you slow time down, the sound comes. And as soon as you hear that sound, the first level is I heard a sound, then the vikalpa comes in, the movement of buddhi. And vikalpa means like conceptualization, that you take the sound and then your mind conceptualizes what it is and produces in your mind a picture of some pot, a general pot. So it goes both ways. When you see something, then you go to vikalpa and you put a name to it, or it can go the other way. Someone can say a name and you put a concept to it. So the vikalpa goes both ways. Understand? So the Padma Purana is saying the name of Krishna is vikalpa rahita. That means it is not that you see Krishna and then what is that? And then your mind moves, and then your intelligence creates a name. So let's say, for example, if you have a son and he's born, then you think, but I'll give him a good name. What name shall I give him? Frederick. Okay? So then you see him, then your mind moves and you come up with a name and connect it with him. Okay? So Krishna is not a person whose name came from vikalpa of anyone. All the things of this world are like that. Horse, house, car, red, blue, all these ideas, they're all produced, coming from the vikalpa, human mind. First raw experience, and then identifying the jati, and then giving a name. You see? But Krishna is not like that. Why? Because Krishna is Advait, non-dual. He is indivisible. He is indivisible. So every characteristic of him cannot be separated from him. So his name and Krishna are the same, because he's Advait. He wasn't given a name by Gargacharya in the name-giving ceremony. His name is an eternal aspect of his Swarup, and it's not different from him. And he himself is fully present in his name. So coming this way, it is not that the name of Krishna is given to him by vikalpa, the process of vikalpa, but it's part of his Swarup. Okay, now let's see coming the other way. If a person does not commit offenses to the holy name, then when they hear the name of Krishna, then there is what is called Jatiti Pratita. Jatita Pratita. Jatiti Pratita. Jatiti means immediate,
Inmediato.
and the pratita means experience. So if a person does not commit namaparad, he's so when he hears or speaks, it's namabhas. Then the name of Krishna, the sound will come, and at once the form of Krishna will manifest, without any vikalpa, without any movement of the intelligence trying to identify what is the sound and create a conception about it. Because any conception you have is not Krishna. Because the material intelligence is a rajasic transformation of ahankar. Material intelligence, buddhi, is a rajasic transformation of ahankar. And all vikalpa is done by buddhi. You see? So how can the buddhi understand Krishna's name, identify Krishna's name, conceptualize about Krishna? So when the Padma Purana said that the name of Krishna is Vikalpa Rahit, it means one, that it was not given to Krishna by someone due to the movement of their mind having identified the jati or the universal, the characteristic of Krishna. And on the other hand, the name of Krishna coming this way is not identified as a sound and then connected with a concept, but rather as soon as the sound hits the chitta, Krishna manifests himself there. That is called Jatiti Pratita. Jatiti Pratita, the example Jiva Goswami gives is this. Try to understand. 10 people were going on a journey and they got to a river. So when they got to the river, they hired a boatman and they all got into the boat, they crossed the river, they got out the other side. So then the leader of the group told someone, just count everyone and make sure we all made it across the river. So then, that person was counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, oh, there's someone missing. Someone missing, no, 10 people in our group. And I'm only counting 9. He has someone else. You should also check. So then that person, he counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You're right. There's only we've lost someone. So they're in a state of confusion. So one person who was somewhat smarter than them, he came up to them and he said to the person who was counting, Dasamas Tvam Asi. Dasamas Tvam Asi. You are the 10th person. And was it? Then he realized at once. So that is called Jatiti Pratita. An immediate realization of the truth of the situation. Dasamas Tvam Asi. So in the same way, the name of Krishna is not a material sound, it is not something which is interpreted by the intelligence, it is not a shabda, a word, which is connected through conceptualization with the idea of who Krishna is. It's none of those things. But rather when a person is very humble and they don't commit any offense, then Krishna. And the beautiful lotus feet of Krishna appear. And you can have his darshan. Namabhas will do this. Namabhas will give vision. In the stage of Nishta, will give vision of Krishna's form and some qualities. In the stage of Ruchi, Namabhas will give the realization of Krishna's form, qualities and sweetness and associates. Then you can follow them. That's Raganuga Bhakti. How can you follow the associates if you've never seen them? And then when Asakti comes, your own Siddharup will begin to manifest. And as your Abhiman, your identity, becomes more and more absorbed in your Siddharup, then Asakti will turn into Bhav, and that is Swarup Siddhi. Then you have become, your sadhana is successful in this life. Next life you will take birth in Krishna's Leela, in Bhava Vrindavan, in some universe. So this is how the power of the holy name incorporates us gradually into Sri Krishna's Leela. Is it clear?
Если ум автоматически пытается поместить имя Кришны в какую-то категорию, это будет аппаратха или абхаз?
If the mind automatically will put the name of Krishna in some category. Will it be aparadham or not?
Yes, because it is one of the offenses to the holy name. Tadatavado Hari Namni Kalpanam. To give imaginary interpretation to the holy name. So if you put some material category, conceptualization onto the name, this is one of the 10 offenses directly. Tadatavado Hari Namni Kalpanam. So one should hear from Guru, Krishna and his name, there is no difference whatsoever. Vacham vachakam mitudait bhavato nama surupa dvayam purvasmat parameva hantakarnam tatrapi janimahe yastasmin vita paraga nivaha pranita samantats bhavet asyanidam pasat sopi hi sadanandam buddho majjati. Rupa Goswami said. There is no difference between vacha and vachaka. Between Krishna, who is addressed by the name, and the name by which Krishna is addressed. There's no difference at all, except for one difference. Krishna's name is more merciful than Krishna himself. Because if you serve Krishna himself, he's here in the form of deity. You can make offenses, say aparad, and you will not progress. But if you chant continuously, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, then Harinam will remove all your offenses. Nama Paradyuktanam Nama Evapt Harantyagam. Continuous chanting removes offenses. And so Harinam will take away all the offenses that you made to Krishna's Swarup and turn you upside down and push you head first into the ocean of rasa. So Krishna and his name are not different, but his name is more merciful. Another question? Yes, sir?
What is the meaning of jati?
Jati.
Jati, what's the meaning of jati?
Oh, jati. Jati means universal. And when you speak a word always indicates a dravya, a substance, a gun, a quality, a kriya, an activity, or a jati, a category. So, for example, if you see an animal, you are not in the dark, you're not sure what it is. Is it a cat? Is it a fox? And then you oh, it's a fox. So it's a fox, but fox itself is a jati, it's a category. And this is so the words that we are using are jatis. They are categories, and they are instantiated in the things around. For example, you are all in the jati, the category of human beings. But then within that there are sub-jatis, like there are men and there are women. Then you have the qualities, old man, young man. So actually this question is raised in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Prayojan Maharaj asked Shukadev Goswami, "Oh Shukadev Goswami, every single word in the dictionary either indicates a jati, a gun, a kriya, or a dravya. But since the Supreme Absolute Truth is not a material substance, he has no material qualities, he has no karma, material activities, and he's not in a jati, it's not a universal. Because here is a dog, there is a dog, there is a dog. But Brahman, the Supreme Truth, is only one. So it cannot be instantiated in anything else, because it's one. Eka. Ekam Madhvityam, one without a second, so it cannot be a jati. So Prayojan Maharaj asked this question in the 10th canto, in the first verse of chapter 87. Every single word is either speaking of a dravya, a gun, a kriya, or a jati. So how is it possible to describe the Supreme Truth? So the words that describe Krishna are not mundane words. They are transcendental, they are Shakta Brahma. And they descend from the spiritual world, out of Krishna's mercy. So this Shukadeva Goswami gives the answer, and this discussion between them is called the Brahma Upanishad. It's an Upanishad that appears, it's included within Srimad Bhagavatam at the beginning of chapter 87 of the 10th canto. So you can, I have given classes on this, you can look online and find very long and in-depth explanation of this Brahma Upanishad and Jati and all of these things. It corresponds in Western philosophy to universals, like Plato will speak about, or Aristotle will speak about universals. So the word jati corresponds to that in Western philosophy.